Back at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve under the third full course caution of today's race. None of the front runners have come on to pit road. Not a surprise.
No, they're all hoping this thing. I'm sure Marcus is running this thing in fourth gear, not even touching the gas pedal. They have to. We heard the guy earlier say they gained a half a lap. Well, they need another 2.5 laps.
And you talked about earlier, it's hard to save fuel on a road course. What about under the caution?
Oh, yeah, it's a lot easier under caution, that's for sure. But, you know, on a road course, when you're leading the race, it's hard to save fuel. If you're in the back, you could slow down a half second, 3/4 of a second. But when you're leading, boy, you just want to go and just spank them all.
What are they saying in the 59 pit there, Gary?
Well, interesting. Marcos Ambrose came on the radio and asked the crew chief, are we going to have enough fuel? And crew chief, Ernie Cope, said it's going to be real tight. But right now, they're gambling. They don't want to give up the track position. They are staying out as of this moment. And it's interesting, guys, because the crew was cheering every time they saw on the monitor when Getters or anybody else, Biffle, went off the racetrack. They wanted the yellow. They got the yellow, but they haven't brought him in to take advantage of it. Vince Welch?
Well, there's no question that the 41 is staying out as well. There you get a good look at Scott Pruitt and the Juicy Fruit machine. And Brad Parrott said they've had their pit strategy screwed up a couple of times already. He's not going to screw it up again, so they're going to leave him out there, and for better or worse, Scott Pruitt's going to be out on the track till the end.
See quite a bit of debris to be swept off the racetrack while the field is gathered up by the pace car. All these guys that have had these little off-course excursions and brought things back onto the speedway, so they'll take a minute and clean things up and set us up for the finish. It's really going to be interesting. How many laps of caution do you get here? Do you save enough fuel to make the finish? And, you know, these guys they've plotted their strategy. They have to stick with it now. You can't change course.
How do they calculate that? I wonder if we can find out. I mean, how do they say, okay, 1 lap of caution gets us 2 laps of green? How do they do that?
Well, on an oval track, that's usually the number, right? 2 to 1. Now, I had a couple of crew chiefs tell me this morning that on a road course, it's not 2 to 1 on a road course. You don't quite get that much under caution. So we'll see.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
Obviously, there's no question, though, riding around here in high gear, almost at idle, you're not using as much fuel as you are when you're revving the engine up and you got your foot to the floor trying to run through the gears. So they're saving some fuel and setting themselves up to make the finish, maybe.
Maybe. You're going to make that's the best thing. You ask the crew chief, hey, we got enough fuel? And they don't say nothing, and they say, maybe. You're like, oh, man, that's not good.
Yeah.
So that means everybody behind me can't make it either because they all come in the same lap.
Yeah, well, there are guys farther back, though, that do have enough fuel to make the finish, like Boris said. But Boris is all the way back in 11th spot right now. So that's a lot to overcome.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. His track position is not as well as he would like it, that's for sure.
One thing to expect a couple guys to run out of fuel in front of you in a situation like this, but for 10 others to run out, that's probably not going to happen.
Slowing it down.
So while we're under the caution, why don't we see if we can reach our in-race reporter, Scott Pruitt, who's running in 2nd place right now.
No, they're
Scott Pruitt, Randy LaJoy. What's your competition look like out there for the rest of the race?
quite a bit. Yeah, they've been tangling. Don't worry about them.
Sounds like there's one of the spotters trying to reach Scott on the radio. All right, let's try it now.
Scott Pruitt, Randy LaJoy, you have anything for that 59 car? He's looked very strong all day. How much car you got left?
Well, the car feels good. You know, the Juicy Fruit Dodge has been running spectacular all day long. We've been really trying to be careful with the brakes. We leaned on them a little bit harder that last run, but still trying to leave a little bit for the last 10 laps. So we'll have to wait and see. The 59's been strong all day, and as well as Bella's right behind me. So I think it's going to be a great show to the finish.
And I'm sure the crew chief says you got 10 extra gallons of fuel. Don't worry about it.
You know what? Of all the things I got to worry about right now, that's not one of them. If we run out of gas, it's not going to be my you know what on the line.
Okay, Brad. Here you go. It's all in your court now.
You know, as much horsepower as we got underneath Juicy Fruit Dodge today, we're getting great gas mileage, and yes, we can make it from here. You know, it's all in Scott's hand to get by that 59, and he's a great race car driver. I'm glad I got him in my camp today and next week.
Okay, guys, that's awesome. Good luck.
Thank you, Randy.
So they say they've got enough fuel. Do they have the car to get by Marcus Ambrose in the laps remaining? Working to the final stages today in Montreal. We're coming back in a moment. X Games 13 from Los Angeles. Coming up next, you will see Moto X Freestyle, and later Ricky Carmichael makes his X Games debut. X Games 13 next, after NASCAR. And don't forget, Boris said will be at X Games tomorrow. But of course, first we'll turn our attention to NASCAR. The Nextel Cup Series at Pocono, presented by Rush Hour 3, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the pole for the first time in forever. He and Kurt Busch will lead the field to the green flag. ESPN.com has more information for you. Our coverage begins tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Time.
You don't think he wants to be in that chase?
Junior?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That whole race team stepped it up a notch.
There are all kinds of ways to have a good time around the aisle, the Notre Dame aisle here in Montreal. That's got to be a little bit chilly, that water temperature, though. The double-duty drivers who will be back in Pocono tomorrow that are racing here in Montreal today. Where are they running in the race? Some of them making out pretty well. Some of them not too good.
You know, Carl Edwards had a rough day. He's having a rough day. But that's something that those guys obviously are going to look at. They felt something hitting earlier in the weekend on Thursday. They seen that it was definitely rubbing the racetrack. You know, a lot of guys have done that on speedways. You end up having to go in there and refabricate the race car so it clears the ground.
So we're coming to the green flag.
Clean them off.
There will be 14 laps to go. Marcus Ambrose leads. Scott Pruitt is second. Ron Fellows third. Kevin Harvick fourth. Robbie Gordon fifth. There are 18 cars on the lead lap. How many of them have enough fuel to make it to the finish? And, oh, what if we get a late caution and we end up with a green-white checker overtime finish?
Well, you know, we heard Hornaday earlier say about the brakes glazing over. We're going to find out in turn one how many guys have brakes glazed over. Because if they do, they're not going to stop that good.
Ambrose to lead him back to the restart. That was Andy Lally that didn't get going. Jeff Burton with some contact with him. The feeding frenzy down into turn one on Lally. Nope, Hornaday.
I'm coming in, guys. I'm coming in.
That was big.
Whoa, trouble.
Yeah, that was Pappas coming out sliding from the grass.
Boy, Mexico City, Boris said, passed about 3 cars one time doing that.
Who was it? It was Scott Pruitt that we heard from earlier talking about patience. You're going to have patience until you get down to the laps that counted.
Absolutely.
Well, we're down to the laps that count. 13 to go.
We're still a long way away. I mean, that is a long time sitting in this race car for another 13 laps.
Here's Boris said. Ron Hornaday, that is for 9th and 10th spots.
It's time to go. Boris said, okay, these guys in front of me, they're not going to stop. I have to catch them. I have to run them down.
Hornaday looking a little the worse for wear for his little excursion down there, boiling the brakes some.
Well, look at who's 2 cars behind Hornaday. The birthday boy.
Was that Nick Johnson?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure they relayed the message that it wasn't just the 17 that picked Ron's tires off the ground.
Well, you drivers never forget, do you? That happened on what? Lap 2, lap 3?
Lap 2. Yeah, we don't. It could be months. We don't forget.
12 to go. Ambrose and Pruitt being chased by Ron Fellows.